about some of the different things we were involved in. We attended a Bible study that's hosted by the Missionaries. We went and visited the Martins. We attended 2 different churches in the area, since we were there for 2 Sundays, just to get a better idea of what's in the area. The most exciting part that I had was when we went and handed out gospel tracts and went out and talked to people on the streets and in the park in Rosarito. We had a great opportunity to share the gospel and also hand out tracts that were, it's not like in America where you might hand out tracts or go try to talk to somebody about God or strike up a conversation about evangelism. Here you would hand a tract in Spanish, of course, to them, and they would actually read it like right there. When you walk away, you can see them reading it. As a general rule, pretty much anybody that we came in contact with was very open to talk about God, and we were able to, the Martins know a little bit more Spanish than we did when we came down, and so it was very exciting to see the interaction and the openness that the people had down there, and they would genuinely listen as well as read any of the gospel literature that we would give them. We also distributed food to the needy and the homeless. We did that on a couple different occasions. There's a big need for obviously, because of a third world country, there's a lot of need for food, basic necessities, and so we helped put together some what we call homeless bags that has the basic necessities and some food and a little bit of money to actually buy another meal for them as well. We also spent time at the orphanage, which was great, the Door of Faith Orphanage. It was a well-run Christian orphanage, and we were able to hang out there with the kids, and that was probably definitely a highlight for Kathy and the kids, and also for me, was being able to just hang out and show the kids love just by being there, playing with them, and just having conversations. And also, Kathy got to go to a Christian school and go see what they did as far as with young kids. They're just starting, where they're teaching not only English but other Christian principles as well. And got to visit 2 different men's rehab centers where men would go for alcohol and drug addiction. One, I'll tell a story about one of in Guadalupe Valley, there was this, they had one of the best success rates for people struggling with addictions, and it was no surprise that they were really focused on in-depth Bible study and prayer, and they are one of the best as far as men going out of that program after they finish it and actually going into the real world, that there's lasting change in their lives. So that was very encouraging. When we go down there, that would be, with the 2 men's rehab centers that we went to, that would just be one opportunity for me to lead a Bible study there. They're always looking for sound doctrine, Bible teaching, and it's a great place for people that are already in a place in their life where they're willing and able to hear the gospel and any kind of biblical preaching that can come out of that. Another story that comes to mind was we were walking on the streets in Ensenada, which is south of La Mission, and we were able to hand out food to an elderly gentleman that appeared to be homeless, and he actually had burst into tears, which was very moving for us. You know, we wouldn't think of a meal as being that influential on somebody, but it was very encouraging to us. And you know, we talked about it like, we don't know how long it'd been since this guy had eaten, and what seemed small to us was just such a big deal to him, and they were so grateful just for any little thing that we did for any of the people. So as I move on to, during our trip, it was clear that Kathy and I, we had a deep desire to go to Mexico and spread the good news of the gospel and make disciples. And that includes the USA while we're stateside still. That will be what you see when we talk about the future as we transition to the future of wherever God leads us. That is going to be at the forefront of our missionary experience, is going to be evangelism and discipleship. We have a deep desire to share the gospel, but it's immediately followed up with an invitation for an in-depth Bible study to focus on discipleship. And that's where I get really excited, because that is going to be our main focus. We're going to still meet physical needs, like providing food, providing basic necessities, helping out at the orphanage with any building projects. Those are all going to be side things that are going to be part of our ministry, but the main focus of what we want to do, and what really has Kathy and I excited, is the evangelism, sharing the gospel, and then hand in hand with discipleship, which is in-depth Bible study. One of our hopes is that through that process, that if we have a group of people, that we would be able to have the start of a church plant, which would then, as we got to that point where it became almost self-sustaining, we would call a pastor from Mexico, a national pastor, to come up and be the pastor in that new congregation. And that's kind of where I think we call it the Paul style of preaching, where you go to an area, and that's really what we feel called to do the evangelism, do the discipleship, and then when you get enough people together, be able to start a doctrinally and theologically sound church, and then, like I said, call a pastor, and then, stay until it's self-sustaining, and then we'll go on to the next opportunity wherever God leads, to share the gospel to another part of Mexico, or wherever in the world that God calls us to next. So that's really, anything you take away from my presentation, that's really our main focus, is spreading the gospel. So that would obviously be our priority. There's, like I already talked about, Kathy would have the opportunity to help at the Christian school, which would be a great opportunity for evangelism as well, where you have kids coming in, and you don't know if they're coming in from a Christian home or not, and she would have an opportunity to get to build relationships with the mothers of the kids when they're dropping them off. And so that would be a great opportunity, and she'd probably end up doing that about 2 days a week, so it wouldn't be a big strain on her, so she could still be at home with the kids the rest of the time. And I already talked about providing food. That would be part of our ministry, just having extra food and those basic necessities. And as I'm out doing street evangelism or talking in the park or doing anything, we would keep some of those with us, and so we can help. It's really obvious who in Mexico is doing really well, who has a job, who has the money for basic necessities. So that would still be part of our ministry. So another thing, and this is on down the road, we'd love to host, whether it's here in the States. We love to have people over to our house. Hospitality is one thing for us where we just love to entertain and fellowship with people. So along with that, when we get established down there, Kathy and my passion would be to be able to host short-term missions trips, or anybody from this church or anybody else would love to host and get them connected. There's a network of missionaries down there where some of them are focusing on, there's like a Christian healthcare center, there's a Christian orphanage, there's a building projects in the area. So no matter what everybody feels that God could call them to do, we would love to be in a position to, when we're down there, host anybody that wants to come down and help as well. Things we need to, that we're preparing for as a family right now. We're continuing to learn Spanish as a family. So the kids, they pick it up a lot quicker than me. So, and Kathy actually had a couple years in college of Spanish. So that's something we're working on as a family right now, is learning the language. That will help us as we prepare to go down there. And then for me, myself, I need to grow and study so that I can be an effective tool for God. There's a lot of training and books. I've sought godly counsel on what they would recommend on me learning or studying. And so we're in the process of that, and really that'll never stop for me. But it's been good to get that counsel from guys that I respect. we're going to be selling our house, getting ourselves in a position financially where once God provides the needed funds for us to go down and be full-time missionaries, that won't be a stumbling block. So in the next couple months, we have our work cut out for us as we work on pressure washing, cleaning up the house, making it saleable. So that's one thing we're working on. One thing that we would really appreciate prayer on is the biggest decision we're facing right now is we're still prayerfully considering whether to form our own nonprofit organization, which would have a governing board that we would be accountable to, or to go along with another organization, another missionary organization. So those are two good options. Both of them have pros and cons. So we are still prayerfully considering what would be the best for our situation and what would be the best that God would have us do. So we just would pray that if you think about it, that you would just pray that God would grant us wisdom as we make that very foundational decision before we start going through the process of raising support. So that's the biggest thing that's looming over us right now, but we'll continue to pray about that one. I also wanted to make sure and let you guys know that if it wasn't for our church family, we wouldn't have had enough to even go on this short-term missions trip. To say that the trip was life-changing for our family would be an understatement. We definitely, after we had gone down there, and even while we were down there, Kathy and I both felt led that this is something we want to do full-time. And I'm not going to lie, there's times where it's scary. I mean, when we're selling our house that we love, we look at possibly, leaving this church, which we love, and the friendships and everything that we've done, financial security, all the things that we're going to be giving up. But we both feel that there's just no other option for us. God has laid it on our hearts that we feel that this is going to be our future, and for as long as we continue to strive for the next step as God leads. So before we go to questions, I wanted to just read, we've all heard the Great Commission before, but it's been really prevalent in our lives as we make this transition, as we start to look to the future. So Matthew 28:19 through 20. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you, and behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. I wanted to make sure, and with me getting up here and babbling, getting sidetracked, I wanted to make sure as I brought everything to a close that all of this is going to be to the glory of God. It's not about me, it's not about my family, it's about us being obedient to what God calls us to do, and we're not going to take any credit for what He does or what He's done in our family. We want to give Him all of the glory. So I wanted to make sure and sum that up. If in the midst of my presentation it sounded like really we're trying to follow what God has planned for us. So I also wanted to mention, we know there'll be tough times. We don't go into this looking at through rose-colored glasses. We realize there's going to be times of discouragement. We'll get lonely, but even with all of those looming negative things, we can use that for good, because we'll be more dependent on God when we get down there. And as long as we're faithful to share the gospel. It's really exciting to see all of the baptisms today, and it just gets me more excited about the future as we look to go down, because really that's an outward appearance of a changed heart. And we look forward to going down there, because there is no bigger decision in anybody's life than what are you going to do about the gospel? What are you going to do with Jesus? Because at the end of the day, the statistics show that 10 out of 10 people die. And what happens then, is the most important thing in your life. So we look forward to going down, and even while we're here in the States, to do what Paul did and say, preach the gospel, that everybody could repent and trust in Jesus. So with that is all of the talking that I have. If you have any questions for me or Kathy, we'd be more than happy to answer any of them. If I repeat the questions, I should have mentioned before, but there was family and friends from where we both grew up that weren't able to come up, obviously, because of the drive, and so Kathy's videotaping it, so it's not because I think I look good on a video, but it's for our friends and family that couldn't make it. So if I repeat the question that you asked, that's why, just so that everybody can hear when we post this on our blog or Facebook. So other